Part 1. The Exploration Vessel. Clark drifted through the darkness of space, its sensors scanning the vast emptiness for anything unusual. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the data stream scroll across his screen. 3 months had passed since they left Earth, and the mission had been quiet. Too quiet. The crew was getting restless, and Morrison couldn't blame them. They had signed up for adventure and discovery, but so far all they had found was empty space and distant stars. Amy Chen worked at the communication station, her fingers moving across the holographic controls as she monitored dozens of frequencies. She was young but talented, one of the best comm officers in the fleet. Most days her job was boring, filtering out cosmic radiation and stellar noise. But today something changed. A signal pierced through the background static, clear and unmistakable. Her eyes widened as she isolated the transmission. Morrison noticed her reaction immediately. He had served with Chen long enough to read her body language. Something important had just happened. He stood and walked over to her station, leaning down to look at her screen. The waveform displayed there was unlike anything they had encountered before. It had structure and pattern, the unmistakable signature of intelligent design. Chen looked up at him with excitement in her eyes. "Commander, I have a signal. It is not from Earth. It is not human." Morrison felt his heart rate increase. In 70 years of space exploration, humanity had never found evidence of other intelligent life. They had discovered bacteria on Mars and complex ocean life on Europa, but nothing that could build technology or communicate across the stars. The galaxy had seemed empty and lonely, until now. "Can you decode it?" Morrison asked. Chen worked quickly, her training taking over as she ran the signal through the ship's artificial intelligence. The AI compared the transmission against every known mathematical and linguistic pattern in its database. Minutes passed in tense silence as the rest of the bridge crew realized something significant was happening. Kyle Bennett at the tactical station stopped his routine system checks and watched. The helmsman held the ship steady, waiting for orders. The AI finally found a match. The signal used basic mathematical sequences as a foundation, building up to more complex concepts. It was a universal language designed to be understood by any species capable of space travel. Chen's screen filled with translated text as the message became clear. "I have it," Chen said. "It is a distress call. They are under attack and requesting immediate assistance. Coordinates are included in the transmission." Morrison moved back to his command chair, his mind racing through the implications. First contact with an alien species, and they were in trouble. He pulled up the tactical display and examined the coordinates. Bennett was already calculating the distance and flight time. 2 light years from our current position, Bennett reported. The Vega sector. Our charts show no human colonies or stations in that area. Morrison knew what he had to do. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for generations. The chance to meet another intelligent species, to learn that they were not alone in the universe. And now that moment had arrived, not with peaceful greetings, but with a cry for help. There was only one choice to make: all hands battle stations. Set course for those coordinates, maximum speed. The Clark responded instantly. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, each person going to their assigned station and running through combat protocols. The ship's quantum drive powered up, distorting space around the vessel as it prepared to jump. Warning lights flashed throughout the corridors as automated systems sealed bulkheads and pressurized compartments. In the weapons bay, railguns extended from their housing and missile pods loaded their deadly cargo. Morrison watched his crew work and felt pride in their professionalism. They had trained for combat scenarios, but this was real. They were about to face an unknown enemy to help an unknown species. The weight of command settled on his shoulders. Whatever happened next would be remembered in history books. He would be the human who led Earth's first military action against an alien force. The quantum drive engaged, and the Clark leaped forward. Space twisted and bent around them as they covered impossible distances in seconds. Morrison used the transit time to prepare. He ordered Chen to keep monitoring the distress signal for any changes. He had Bennett run simulations on potential combat scenarios. He checked with engineering to make sure all systems were at peak performance. And he tried to imagine what they would find when they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. What Morrison did not know was that the distress call had never been intended for human ears. The message had been broadcast on frequencies used by the Galactic Union. a confederation of dozens of alien species that had been exploring the galaxy for thousands of years. The Union had discovered Earth 200 years ago and immediately classified it as a Class 12 death world. The planet's high gravity, aggressive wildlife, and dangerous environment made it one of the most hostile worlds in known space. The fact that an intelligent species had evolved there was considered both remarkable and terrifying. The Union had made a decision to avoid contact with Earth. Humanity was quarantined, their solar system marked as off-limits. The reasoning was simple. Species that evolved on death worlds were dangerous. They were survivors, fighters, and predators. They could not be trusted to follow the peaceful protocols that governed Union space. Better to let them develop in isolation or perhaps destroy themselves before they could threaten others. But humans had developed faster than expected. They had created nuclear weapons, then learned to control that power. They had reached their moon, then built colonies throughout their solar system, and now they had quantum drives allowing them to explore beyond their home. The Union had been preparing to make formal contact soon, to bring humanity into the greater galactic community under careful supervision. That plan was about to be completely disrupted. The Clark dropped out of quantum drive near the coordinates. The view screen activated and showed the crew what they had come to find. A battle was in progress. 6 small warships surrounded a larger vessel, firing energy weapons at its failing shields. Explosions bloomed across the defending ship's hull as its armor began to fail. Morrison could see atmosphere venting from multiple breaches. The alien ship was dying, and they were the only ones who could help. Morrison made his decision in an instant. All weapons target the attacking vessels. Fire at will. The Clark's railguns spoke with thunder, sending tungsten projectiles toward the enemy at incredible speeds. Missiles launched from their pods, accelerating toward their targets. The attacking ship scattered in confusion, not expecting this new arrival. They had been hunting easy prey, a defenseless merchant vessel. Now they faced something entirely different. They faced humans from a death world, and they had made a terrible mistake. Part 2. The first railgun slug hit an attacking corvette and passed completely through it. The alien ship's shields offered no resistance to the solid projectile traveling at such extreme velocity. The corvette exploded in a brilliant flash as its reactor lost containment. Debris scattered in all directions, pieces of hull spinning away into the void. The other attacking ships broke formation immediately, their tactics dissolving into chaos. Morrison watched the tactical display as the battle unfolded. The Clark's targeting systems tracked each enemy vessel with mechanical precision. Bennett called out hit confirmations as missiles found their marks. 2 more corvettes took critical damage and began tumbling out of control, their crews likely dead or dying. The remaining 3 ships attempted to regroup and return fire. Energy beams lanced out from the enemy vessels, striking the Clark's shields. The human ship shuddered slightly as the defensive screens absorbed the incoming fire. Morrison glanced at the engineering station where Lieutenant Sarah White monitored the ship's systems. She looked up and gave him a quick nod. The shields were holding with minimal power drain. The alien weapons were designed to overwhelm shields with sustained energy bombardment. It was an effective tactic against most Union vessels, which used lighter defensive systems to save mass and power. But human shields had been engineered to withstand the intense radiation of deep space travel and protect against high-velocity impacts. The alien energy weapons simply could not generate enough power to penetrate them. "Keep firing," Morrison ordered. "Disable those ships." The Clark's weapons continued their deadly work. Railguns fired in controlled bursts, each shot calculated for maximum effect with minimum collateral damage. Morrison had no desire to massacre the enemy crews. He wanted to end the fight quickly and save the ship they had come to rescue. Another corvette lost its engines and went dark, drifting powerless. The final 2 attackers made a decision and jumped away, abandoning their comrades. Morrison let them go. The battle was over. He turned his attention to the damaged alien vessel. It hung in space like a wounded animal, atmosphere still leaking from multiple breaches. Small fires burned in exposed sections where oxygen fed the flames. The ship's shields were completely down and its weapons were offline. "Chen, hail them. Let them know we are here to help." The communication came through almost instantly, but it was audio only. The voice that spoke was high-pitched and fast, the words flowing together in a language Morrison could not understand. But the ship's AI worked quickly, analyzing the syntax and building a translation matrix. Within seconds, the alien words became English, though the voice retained its unusual quality. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Varix of the merchant ship Gentle Dawn. Your assistance is appreciated, but you must leave immediately. The raiders will return with reinforcements. Morrison leaned forward in his chair. Captain Varix, I am Commander Jake Morrison of the human vessel Clark. We received your distress call and came to help. What is your status? There was a pause. The silence stretched out uncomfortably long. Morrison wondered if the translation had failed or if the communication link had broken. Then Varix spoke again, his voice filled with something that sounded like disbelief. Did you say human? From Earth? That is correct. We are from the Sol system. Another long pause. Morrison exchanged glances with Chen, who was working on establishing a visual connection. The AI was having trouble matching the video protocols between the two ship systems. Finally, the view screen flickered and resolved into an image. Morrison felt his breath catch in his throat. This was humanity's first glimpse of an intelligent alien species. Captain Varix stood in the center of his damaged bridge, and he was nothing like Morrison had imagined. The alien was small, perhaps 4 feet tall, with a slender build that seemed almost fragile. His skin had a light blue tint that reminded Morrison of Earth's oceans. Large eyes dominated a delicate face, and his movements were graceful despite the obvious stress of the situation. Behind Varix, other crew members worked frantically at damaged stations. Some were treating injured comrades with equipment Morrison did not recognize. The bridge was filled with smoke and the flashing lights of emergency systems. But what struck Morrison most was how vulnerable they all looked. These were not warriors or soldiers. They were merchants and traders who had been attacked by pirates. Varix stared at Morrison through the view screen, his large eyes even wider than normal. By the eternal song, he whispered, You really are from the Deathworld. Morrison frowned at the term. Deathworld? Why do you call Earth that? Varix seemed to shake himself out of his shock. Commander Morrison, you must understand the danger. Earth was classified as a Class 12 Deathworld by the Galactic Union. Your species was quarantined. The distress call was not meant for you. It was broadcast on Union frequencies for our patrol fleets. I do not understand, Morrison said. We responded to a call for help. Are we not welcome? Varix made a gesture that might have been helplessness. It is not about welcome. It is about survival. Your world is too dangerous. Your gravity would crush most species. Your atmosphere is toxic to many of us. Your planet is filled with predators that hunt and kill. The fact that an intelligent species evolved there is terrifying to the Union. Morrison felt a strange mixture of emotions. Pride that Earth was considered so formidable, confusion about why that would lead to isolation, and growing concern about what would happen next. Before he could respond, Bennett spoke up from the tactical station. Commander, sensors are detecting multiple ships approaching. Long-range scans show at least 15 vessels. They are moving fast. Morrison turned back to Varix. Captain, your ship is badly damaged. We are bringing you and your crew aboard. We will sort out the politics later. Varix looked like he wanted to argue. Morrison could see the conflict in the alien's expression. But another explosion somewhere in the Gentle Dawn's engineering section made the decision clear. Varix gave a jerky nod. Understood. We are abandoning ship now. Morrison immediately gave orders to extend the docking collar and prepare to receive the alien crew. The Clark's medical bay was alerted to expect casualties of unknown physiology. Security teams were positioned at the docking port, not because Morrison expected trouble, but because protocol demanded it. And all the while, the sensors tracked the approaching enemy fleet. Bennett provided updates as the alien crew transferred to the Clark. 12 corvettes, 2 frigates, and 1 capital ship. The capital ship is 3 times our mass. They will be in weapons range in 10 minutes. Morrison watched the tactical display. 15 ships against 1. Any sane commander would retreat, especially with civilians aboard to protect. But Morrison thought about the crew of the Gentle Dawn, about how they had been attacked by pirates while their own fleet was too far away to help. He thought about how Varix had called Earth a death world, as if humanity was something to be feared. Maybe it was time to show the galaxy what humans could really do. The last of the alien survivors came through the airlock. Morrison stood from his command chair and addressed his crew. All hands, this is the commander. We are going to full combat readiness. The enemy is coming, and we are going to teach them why you do not mess with Deathworlders. Part 3. The Raider fleet emerged from Quantum Drive in a coordinated formation that spoke of military discipline and experience. Morrison studied their approach on the tactical display. The corvettes spread out in a wide arc while the frigates and capital ship drove straight toward the Clark. It was a classic encirclement tactic, one that had been used in naval warfare on Earth for centuries. Kyle Bennett ran sensor analysis on each vessel, building a threat assessment for Morrison to review. The corvettes were fast and maneuverable, armed with plasma cannons designed for close-range combat. The frigates carried longer-range particle beam weapons but sacrificed speed for firepower, and the capital ship was a mobile fortress, bristling with weapons and protected by heavy shields. "Commander," Bennett said, "I am reading weapon systems powering up across their fleet. They will be in firing range in 2 minutes." Morrison nodded and opened a channel to the cargo bay where the alien survivors had gathered. Captain Varix appeared on a secondary screen, his face pale even for his species. Morrison could see the fear in those large eyes, but also something else. Resignation, perhaps, or acceptance of what was about to happen. "Captain Varix, I need tactical information. What kind of weapons are we facing?" Varix seemed surprised by the question, as if he had expected Morrison to simply surrender or flee. He gathered himself and responded quickly. "The corvettes use plasma cannons, short range but devastating against shields. The frigates have particle beams, longer range but slower rate of fire. The capital ship has both types plus torpedo launchers, and their defenses, standard Union-grade shields. They absorb energy weapons well, but are vulnerable to sustained bombardment. Commander, you cannot fight them all. You must run while you still can." Morrison smiled, though there was no humor in it. "Captain, you are about to learn something about humans. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to fight back. We learned to win." He closed the channel before Varix could respond. The Raider fleet was in weapons range now. Morrison could see on the tactical display that they were preparing to fire. He took a deep breath and gave his orders, all weapons free. Target the capital ship with railguns. Missiles on the frigates. Point defense ready for incoming fire. The Raider fleet opened fire first. Dozens of plasma bolts and particle beams converged on the Clark from multiple angles. The human ship's shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the incoming energy. The bridge lights dimmed slightly as power was diverted to maintain the defensive screens. But the shields held firm, barely registering the damage. Sarah White called out from engineering. "Shields at 92%. Minimal power drain. These weapons are not penetrating our defenses." Morrison felt a surge of confidence. Human shield technology had been developed over decades of deep space exploration. The engineers had designed them to withstand cosmic radiation, solar flares, and high-velocity micrometeorite impacts. The alien energy weapons were powerful, but they simply could not generate enough focused energy to break through. "Fire all weapons," Morrison ordered. The Clark's railguns thundered, launching tungsten carbide slugs at relativistic velocity. Each projectile carried kinetic energy, equivalent to a tactical nuclear weapon. They crossed the distance to the capital ship in seconds, moving too fast for the enemy to effectively track or intercept. The first slug hit the capital ship's forward shields and they shattered like glass. The second and third slugs punched through the hull, entering near the bow and exiting through the engineering section. The capital ship shuddered as atmosphere vented explosively from the wounds. Secondary explosions rippled along its length as systems failed, and power conduits overloaded. The massive vessel began to list to one side, clearly crippled even if not destroyed. At the same time, the Clark's missile pods opened and released their deadly cargo. Each missile was a smart weapon with its own guidance system and maneuvering thrusters. They spread out like a flock of hunting birds, their sensors locked onto the two frigates. The frigate's point defense systems activated immediately, filling space with defensive fire. They managed to destroy some of the missiles, but dozens more got through. Explosions blossomed across both frigates as the missiles found their targets. One frigate broke apart completely, its structure unable to withstand the cascade of detonations. The other managed to stay intact but was clearly dying, trailing debris and atmosphere as it tumbled out of control. The corvettes broke formation, their careful tactics abandoned in the face of such overwhelming firepower. Some tried to close the distance, hoping to get inside the Clark's weapons envelope. Others attempted to flee, their commanders realizing too late that they were completely outmatched. Morrison felt no pleasure in the destruction, but he was not about to give them a chance to regroup. "Bennett, take out anything that gets close. Target the runners with railguns. The Clark's automated point defense systems engaged the approaching corvettes with mechanical efficiency. Hypervelocity projectiles filled the space around the human ship, creating a deadly barrier. 3 corvettes exploded before they could get within their own weapons range. 2 more were torn apart by the defensive fire. The railguns shifted targets to the fleeing ships. Each shot was carefully calculated for maximum effect. 1 corvette lost its engines and went dark. Another was cut in half by a direct hit to its midsection. The destruction was methodical and complete. Within minutes, the battle was effectively over. The capital ship was crippled and drifting. Both frigates were destroyed or disabled. Of the 12 corvettes, 7 were wrecked and the remaining 5 were broadcasting surrender signals. The raider fleet had been annihilated with barely any damage to the Clark. Morrison opened a channel to the enemy capital ship. A face appeared on the view screen, and Morrison recognized him from the earlier transmission. Warlord Kravik looked nothing like he had before. His earlier arrogance was gone, replaced by shock and fear. The scarred face was pale and his hands trembled. "We surrender," Kravik said, his voice breaking. "Cease fire. Please, we surrender." Morrison studied the warlord for a long moment. "All raider vessels, this is Commander Morrison. Power down your weapons and drop your shields. Do not attempt to flee or we will destroy you." "Is that understood?" The response was immediate. Every remaining raider ship began shutting down their systems. Morrison watched the tactical display as weapons went offline and shields collapsed. They had learned their lesson. Bennett organized boarding parties. "I want those ships secured and their crews detained. And get me a secure channel to Earth Command. They need to know what just happened." Morrison sat back in his command chair and allowed himself a moment of relief. They had won, though he took no joy in the lives lost, but something more important had happened here today. Humanity had just announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. They had responded to a distress call, fought against overwhelming odds, and emerged victorious. Captain Varix appeared on the secondary screen, his expression unreadable. "Commander Morrison, what you just did should have been impossible. 1 ship against an entire fleet, how?" Morrison met the alien's gaze. "Captain, you called Earth a death world. You said we evolved in a hostile environment surrounded by predators. That is all true, but it also made us strong. It made us survivors, and it made us willing to fight for what is right no matter the odds." Part 4. 3 days had passed since the battle. The Clark's cargo bay had been converted into a temporary holding area for the captured raiders, while the damaged enemy ships were tethered to the human vessel with magnetic grapples. Sergeant Lisa Martinez and her security team worked around the clock to keep order, though most of the prisoners were too shocked and terrified to cause trouble. They had never encountered anything like the humans before, and the experience had broken their will to resist. The medical bay was another story. Dr. Nathan Brooks had his hands full, treating both alien crew members from the Gentle Dawn and wounded prisoners. Alien physiology was completely different from human biology, and Brooks was essentially inventing new medical procedures on the fly. He had lost 2 patients in the first day before figuring out that what looked like minor injuries could be fatal to species adapted to low-gravity worlds. Morrison stood in his quarters, reviewing reports and preparing for what came next. The communication to Earth Command had been sent, but with the distance involved it would be days before any response arrived. In the meantime, he had to deal with the immediate situation. He had refugees, prisoners, and damaged ships, and he had a feeling that things were about to get more complicated. A chime indicated someone was at his door. Morrison looked up as Captain Varix entered. The small alien had been given quarters on the Clark and had spent the past 3 days observing the human crew with intense curiosity. Now he approached Morrison with something that looked like nervousness. "Commander Morrison, I need to explain something about the Galactic Union. Something important." Morrison gestured for Varix to sit, though the alien remained standing. The chairs designed for humans were too large for his small frame. Morrison made a mental note to have the fabrication bay create furniture more suitable for their alien guests. "I am listening, Captain." Varix took a breath before speaking. "The Union has been monitoring your species for 200 of your years. When Earth was first discovered, it was immediately classified as too dangerous for contact. The decision was made at the highest levels to quarantine your entire solar system." "Why?" Morrison asked. though he suspected he already knew the answer, because of what you are. Deathworlders. Your planet has gravity nearly double what most Union species find comfortable. Your atmosphere has oxygen levels that would poison many of us. Your oceans are filled with salt that would be lethal to drink, and your entire ecosystem is based on predation, creatures that hunt and kill each other for survival. Morrison nodded slowly. And humans evolved as one of those predators, not just any predator. Persistence hunters. Your ancestors would chase prey for hours or even days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. That kind of endurance is unheard of among Union species. Most intelligent races evolved from herd animals or forest dwellers. They learned cooperation and tool use as a defense against predators. But humans became the predators themselves. Varric paused, his large eyes studying Morrison carefully. When the Union observed your species developing nuclear weapons, there was serious debate about intervention. Some wanted to destroy your civilization before you could spread beyond Earth. Others argued for containment. In the end, the quarantine was maintained and your system was marked as forbidden territory. Yet here we are, Morrison said quietly. We developed faster than light travel. We built exploration ships. And we came out into the galaxy looking for others like us. Varric made a gesture that might have been agreement. Yes, and now everything has changed. You responded to our distress call, you fought off the raiders, you saved my crew, and you did it with such overwhelming force that the entire Union will be terrified when they hear about it. Before Morrison could respond, Amy Chen's voice came over the intercom. Commander, we have multiple ships dropping out of Quantum Drive. They are broadcasting Union identification codes. Morrison and Varric exchanged glances and hurried to the bridge. The view screen showed a fleet that made the raider force look insignificant. At least 20 vessels had arrived, including several that were clearly military warships. They arranged themselves in a defensive formation around the Clark, not threatening but clearly prepared for any contingency. A communication request came through immediately. Chen opened the channel and a new alien face appeared on the screen. This one was taller and more angular than Varric's, with skin that seemed to shift colors in the light. Large expressive eyes regarded Morrison with what looked like careful assessment. The alien wore an elaborate uniform covered in symbols and decorations that suggested high rank. Human vessel Clark. This is Admiral Thalarn of the Galactic Union Patrol Fleet. We have been monitoring this situation and request immediate dialogue regarding your presence in Union space. Morrison stood straight, aware that he was representing not just himself but all of humanity. Admiral, I am Commander Jake Morrison. We responded to a distress call and engaged hostile forces that were attacking a civilian vessel. We are prepared to discuss the situation. Thalarn's colors shifted in a way Morrison could not interpret. Commander Morrison, your species was under strict quarantine. Your presence here represents a significant violation of Union protocols. With respect, Admiral, we had no knowledge of any protocols. We have been exploring this region of space for 3 months and encountered no signs of intelligent life until we intercepted the distress call. As far as we knew, we were alone in the galaxy. Thalarn was silent for a long moment, his colors cycling through several different shades. That is because we deliberately concealed our presence from your species. The decision to quarantine Earth was not made lightly, but it was considered necessary for the safety of the Union. Morrison felt anger rising but kept his voice level. So you would have left Captain Varric and his crew to be destroyed by raiders rather than risk contact with us? Before Thalarn could answer, Varric stepped forward into the view screen's field of view. Admiral Thalarn, if I may. Commander Morrison and his crew saved my ship at considerable risk to themselves. They fought a superior force and showed both courage and mercy in victory. I believe we need to reconsider our assessment of humanity. Thalarn's colors shifted again, this time to what might have been surprise. Captain Varric, you were aboard the Gentle Dawn? Yes, Admiral, and I can testify that these humans are not the mindless predators we feared. They are disciplined, honorable, and brave. They asked me about our weapons and tactics before engaging the raiders. They offered medical care to our wounded, and they accepted the surrender of the enemy rather than destroying them all. The Admiral's colors continued to shift as he processed this information. This is a matter for the Union Council. Commander Morrison, I am extending an invitation for you and a small delegation to meet with Council representatives on Haven Station. We need to discuss how to proceed. Morrison considered the request. He had 48 crew members depending on him. He had refugees and prisoners in his cargo bay, and he had just been told that his entire species had been quarantined for being too dangerous, but he also understood that this was a pivotal moment. How humanity entered the galactic community would shape the future for generations. When and where, he asked. Haven Station. 3 days from here at standard cruise speed. I will transmit coordinates. Commander, I must stress the gravity of this situation. Your presence has fundamentally altered the political landscape of this entire region. I understand, Admiral. We will be there. Part 5 Haven Station emerged from the darkness like a jewel floating in space. Morrison stood on the bridge of the Clark and stared at the massive structure through the view screen. It was enormous, easily 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. Docking bays lined its surface, each one capable of holding multiple ships. Lights glowed from thousands of windows, and the whole station rotated slowly to generate artificial gravity. Amy Chen worked at her station, coordinating their approach with station control. Morrison had chosen his delegation carefully for this meeting. He was bringing Chen, Dr. Brooks, and Captain Varix. The alien had volunteered to speak on humanity's behalf, and Morrison had gratefully accepted. They would need an advocate who understood Union politics. The Clark glided into an assigned berth in what Varix called the diplomatic section. Through the view screen, Morrison could see dozens of other ships, each one representing a different species and culture. Some were sleek and elegant, others were blocky and functional. But all of them shared one thing in common. They looked nothing like human designs. A delegation from the station met them at the airlock. 2 Union peacekeepers in formal uniforms escorted Morrison and his group through wide corridors with high ceilings. The gravity was lighter than Earth standard, and Morrison had to concentrate on his movements to avoid bouncing. Around them, aliens of every description went about their business. Some stopped to stare at the humans, their expressions ranging from curiosity to fear. The council chamber was breathtaking. Tiered seating rose up in a vast amphitheater, surrounding a central platform. Representatives from what must have been 50 different species sat in their designated areas, each with translation equipment and holographic displays. At the center stood Admiral Thalarn and 2 other officials Morrison did not recognize. As the humans entered, the entire chamber fell silent. Thousands of eyes turned to watch them. Morrison felt the weight of that attention, knowing that what happened here would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. Thalarn stepped forward, his colors shifting to what Varix had taught Morrison was a formal neutral tone. Members of the Galactic Union Council, I present Commander Jake Morrison and representatives of the human species from the planet Earth. A murmur ran through the assembly. One of the officials next to Thalarn spoke up. This alien was short and stocky with thick fur covering its body. Its voice was deep and carried easily through the chamber. I am Counselor Brex, chair of the Security Committee. The matter before us is unprecedented. A species from a quarantined Deathworld has entered Union space, engaged in military action, and now requests formal recognition. The security implications are profound. Another counselor stood, this one tall and insectoid with multiple limbs. With respect to Counselor Brex, we must also consider what actually happened. Captain Varix has testified that the humans saved his vessel when our own forces were too far away to help. Should we punish them for responding to a distress call? Brex turned to face the other counselor. The quarantine existed for good reason, Counselor Jess. Deathworld species are inherently dangerous. They evolve in environments that would kill most civilized beings. We cannot simply ignore centuries of policy because of one incident. Morrison had heard enough. He stepped forward, very aware that he was probably the most physically imposing being in the room. May I address the council? Thalarn's colors shifted uncertainly, but he nodded. Commander Morrison has the floor. Morrison took a breath and began, members of the council. I understand your concerns about my species. Yes, we come from a harsh world. Yes, we evolved as hunters. But we also evolved with compassion, curiosity, and a desire to help others. When we heard that distress call, we did not calculate the risks or worry about politics. We responded because someone needed help. He paused, making eye contact with various counselors around the chamber. You call us Deathworlders as if that makes us monsters, but it also made us survivors. It made us strong and resilient. And most importantly, it taught us to value life. On Earth, survival is not guaranteed. We learn to protect each other, to work together, because that is the only way to endure. Counselor Breck stood again. Fine words, Commander. But you destroyed 15 ships and killed hundreds. How do we know you will not turn those weapons against the Union? Because we had choices at every step, Morrison replied firmly. We could have ignored the distress call. We could have fled when the raider fleet arrived. We could have destroyed every enemy ship instead of accepting their surrender. At every decision point, we chose the harder path because it was the right thing to do. Dr. Brooks stepped forward. If I may add something, I have been treating Captain Varix's crew and the wounded prisoners. The medical technology we used was developed on Earth to keep people alive in hostile environments. That same drive to protect and heal is fundamental to who humans are. We are not just predators. We are also caregivers, Amy Chen spoke up next. From a technological standpoint, we have much to offer the Union. Our experience on a death world has driven innovation in materials science, energy systems, and life support. We can share that knowledge and help strengthen the entire community. Captain Varix moved to stand beside Morrison. Counsel, I have served in the merchant fleet for 20 years. I have met many species and visited many worlds. What I witnessed aboard the Clark was not savage violence. It was disciplined professional conduct from people who risked everything to save strangers. They showed honor, mercy, and courage. The chamber erupted in discussion. Dozens of counselors argued with each other in a cacophony of alien languages. Admiral Thellarn raised his hands and gradually the noise subsided. The council will vote on 3 proposals, Thellarn announced. First, whether to maintain the quarantine and demand the humans return to their system. Second, whether to grant humanity provisional membership with observer status. Third, whether to grant full membership immediately. The voting took hours. Each counselor made a statement before casting their vote. Morrison watched the holographic tallies climb, his heart pounding. Some species spoke in favor of humanity, citing their actions and potential contributions. Others expressed fear and urged caution. The debate was heated and passionate. Finally, Thellarn stepped forward once more. The council has voted. The motion to maintain quarantine has been rejected by a significant margin. The motion for full immediate membership has been rejected. The motion for provisional membership has passed. Morrison felt relief wash over him. It was not everything they might have hoped for, but it was a beginning. It meant humanity had a future in the greater galaxy. However, Thellarn continued, there are conditions. First, humanity will accept advisors from the Union to help integrate your society with ours. Second, you will agree to restrictions on military expansion for 10 standard years. Third, you will share your defensive technology to help protect against threats like the Raiders. Morrison glanced at his team. Chen and Brooks both nodded their agreement. On behalf of Earth and humanity, we accept these conditions. The chamber filled with applause, though Morrison noticed some counselors remained seated and silent. This was not a universal victory. There would be challenges ahead, species who still feared humanity and would work against them. But they had taken the first step. As they left the council chamber, Varix approached Morrison. Congratulations, Commander. You have just changed the course of galactic history. Morrison smiled. We could not have done it without you, Captain. You spoke for us when we needed it most. Varix made a gesture of acknowledgement. I spoke the truth. Now comes the hard part, making this alliance work. There will be those who fear you, who see your strength as a threat. Then we will prove them wrong, Morrison said quietly. One day at a time, one act of goodwill at a time. We came to the stars looking for friends, not enemies. The journey back to the Clark was quiet. Morrison thought about everything that had happened since they intercepted that distress call. In just a few days, humanity had gone from being alone in the universe to becoming part of a vast galactic civilization. It was overwhelming and exciting in equal measure. Admiral Thellarn met them at the docking bay. Commander, the Council has assigned your vessel to patrol duties in the Vega sector. You will work alongside Union ships to deal with the Raider threat. Consider it a trial period, a chance to prove humanity's worth. We welcome the opportunity, Admiral.